1942, famed landscape designer Beatrix Farrand designed the landscape surrounding Green Springs Historic House for its last private residents, Michael and Belinda Straight. Farrand is widely held to be America's first influential female landscape architect, coming of age as the profession itself was being formally recognized. In 1899, she was the only woman amongst the 11 founding members of the American Society of Landscape Architects. From the 1890s to the 1950s, she designed over 200 gardens for private residences, large private estates, public parks, botanic gardens, college campuses, and the Woodrow Wilson White House. Her recognized masterpiece, the Gardens of Dumbarton Oaks in Washington, D.C., is considered to be the pinnacle of her career. The landscape at Green Spring is modest in scope compared to Farrand's many grand-scale commissions, but all of its essential elements are intact and demonstrate her signature design principles, including clarity of contour, integration of house and garden, and transition from formal to informal landscapes. She undertook it as she was approaching the end of her decades-long work at Dumbarton Oaks, at the peak of her profession. It was her only documented garden in Virginia, and one of her last residential projects. She drew a sketch plan for the garden at Green Spring and personally superintended much of the work. Her sketch specified a front lawn defined by a curved driveway, a large semicircular formal garden with a grass lawn behind the house, and transitional screening plantings both near and beyond the house and garden. The principal feature remains the formal garden room, a spacious lawn enclosed by a curved stone retaining wall and a crescent of American boxwood. She likely performed the job as a favor to Michael Straight's mother, Dorothy Payne Whitney, one of the wealthiest women in America in the early 20th century. Over the course of Farrand's career, many of her private commissions occupied her on and off for years and led to many close friendships between the designer and her clients. Her association with Michael's mother and his father, Willard Straight, had begun decades earlier in Gilded Age New York, where they moved in the same lofty social circles. Later, she did extensive work for them at their Long Island estate. Later still, she worked for Dorothy and her second husband, Leonard Elmhurst, at their Dartington Hall estate in England, which remains the only known example of her work outside of the United States. At her friend Dorothy's request, Farrand created the perfect garden room for Michael and Belinda to entertain many prominent visitors to Green Spring over the years. Their guest list included politicians, writers, journalists, and scientists from all over the world. In 2014, the Garden Club of Virginia restored core features of Farrand's Green Spring Garden Room, which is only one of 14 gardens by the great designer still existing in the United States. The stone retaining wall, the backbone of the garden, was completely dismantled and rebuilt using only the granite and rose quartz from Farrand's original 1942 construction, and the boxwoods forming the crescent hedge were trimmed and reshaped. The perennial mixed border in front of the hedge was installed much later by Green Spring horticulturalists. Though not in Farrand's plan, the border was nevertheless retained and redesigned by the Garden Club of Virginia. Plants are repeated around the semicircular bed with the informal symmetry of texture, color, height, and bloom sequence that was characteristic of Farrand's plantings. The Farrand-inspired mixed border demonstrates her famous skill in composing intricate perennial borders and is a fitting addition to her garden room here. Green Spring's modest Beatrix Farrand landscape is now a centerpiece of a public garden with an educational mission that reflects Farrand's own dedication to teaching. It showcases the inspiring simplicity of much of her work and helps to increase public recognition of this masterful gardener and her important legacy in American landscape design.